Legalizing Marijuana in the State of Hawaii, Connie Cothran, Herzing University. And I am the recently elected fictitious governor of Hawaii. And we are looking at the issue of whether or not to legalize marijuana for the state of Hawaii. As governor, these are some of the decisions you have to make for the good of the people of your state. And due to some of the research I've looked at, I am leaning toward legalizing marijuana for the state of Hawaii. I'll give you some background on laws regarding marijuana. As of 2018, the U.S. government claims the right to and does criminalize the growing, selling, and possession of marijuana in all states. This right is not given to them by the Constitution, but by the U.S. Supreme Court, most notably in their ruling in 2005 in Gonzalez v. Raich, which again upheld the right of the federal government to ban marijuana use in all states, in spite of the dissenting voice of Justice Clarence Thomas, who stated, by holding that Congress may regulate activity that is neither interstate nor commerce under the Interstate Commerce Clause, the court abandons any attempt to enforce the Constitution's limits on federal power. And in this particular video, this is politics and marijuana. So it's a congressional district debate in the state of Nebraska.
All right, we have another question from a reader. This one's from, start with you, Congressman Bacon. 62-year-old Jim Bartlett of Omaha wants to know your position on legalizing marijuana and changing the DEA classification.
I do support changing the classification at the federal level and allowing states to make this decision. I ultimately think this is a state decision, and we need to come to some coherent policy here, because we have states of Colorado that have legalized it, but because it's still illegal at the federal level, they can't use banking. Folks are carrying around suitcases full of cash, and that's not a good way to do business. I oppose personally legalizing for recreational use marijuana. I do think this should be a state decision, let the states decide, and then that allows states that have legalized it to integrate the financial side of this, because right now it's not working.
Same question to you, Ms. Eastman.
Well, the idea that states should be able to make this decision is a little bit silly, because we know that our neighbors to the west of us have legalized this, and we've also seen the incredible economic boon that it has had for their state. In a state like Nebraska, where we consistently have a budget where we're cutting the budget for public education, even for Metropolitan Community College, for UNO, we need a source of income. And legalizing marijuana, especially for medical marijuana that we know can actually save lives, can actually help address the opioid epidemic, and actually just makes a lot of sense from a fiscal perspective. This is the right decision for Americans. It's kind of silly that we've let it go this long. And the reality is we have a lot of people out there using recreational marijuana and then going to prison. I met a guy the other day at his door that was in prison for 2.5 years for having some pot on him. I mean, come on. 2.5 years? We can't afford that. That's why we have so much overcrowding in our prison system. It's one of the reasons.
Doing away with marijuana laws. What could hardly be imagined a few years ago now appears to be fast approaching nearly inevitable. After spending much of the 20th century creating legal barriers to marijuana use, now in the early years of the 21st century, the nation has embarked on a steady diminishing of marijuana prohibitions. In 16 states and the District of Columbia, so-called medical marijuana is now legal. At least 12 more states are on the brink of a similar acceptance of marijuana use. In another 2, Colorado and Washington, marijuana has been legalized for recreational and medical use, and state officials are beginning to create a legal market that will, in all likelihood, seek to keep marijuana out of the hands of children and teens, but available to adults who wish to use it, and will make it taxable by and accountable to state authority. Oh, so as the governor of any state, and in this case, the governor of Hawaii, you kind of look at other states and see what they're doing, what kind of laws they have. So we're going to take a look at the laws in Colorado as for legalizing, they legalized marijuana. So let's take a look at some of their laws. You must be 21. It's illegal for people under 21 to buy, have, or use retail marijuana. It's a felony for anyone to give or sell to or share marijuana with anyone under 21. You must present a valid ID proving you're 21 or older. Limits to buy retail marijuana only from licensed retail stores. Adults over the age of 21 can buy and possess up to 1 ounce of marijuana at a time. There's limits to selling. Only licensed retailers can sell marijuana products. Adults over 21 can give up to 1 ounce of marijuana to another adult, 21 or older, but can't sell marijuana. This includes homegrown product. And some of the convincing arguments we looked at and listened to. After looking at a number of pros and cons regarding the legalization of marijuana, there are some pretty strong convincing arguments for supporting the legalization of marijuana. For one, legalizing marijuana would add a substantial amount of revenue to the state due to retail taxes, payroll taxes, and business taxes. In essence, the state would go from collecting zero revenue from illegal cannabis sales to millions of dollars from the legal sale of marijuana. Lower incarcerations. Enforcing marijuana laws has serious consequences that deplete social resources, and it contributes to the nation's unconscionable high incarceration rate. In urban communities across the nation, including Hawaii, African American young people are arrested for marijuana possession at double, triple, and even quadruple the rates of their white peers, even though studies show they use marijuana less often. These arrests often began a lifetime of unattainable educational and occupational opportunities that exacerbate the disproportionate impact of drug policy on African American communities. Removing it from the controlled substance list would reduce the number of court cases and incarcerations, thereby saving money. Citizens in the state of Hawaii would benefit from being able to legally purchase marijuana because of the revenue we're bringing to the state from taxes, which will help with schools, infrastructure, and reducing law enforcement costs from enforcing marijuana laws. They will also benefit from not receiving criminal charges from possessing legal amounts of marijuana. Be able to conduct business with banks. Several state attorneys general have reached out to the Senate Banking Committee and others about easing federal restrictions on banks that deal with customers associated with the marijuana industry. Despite differences between federal and state law, the marijuana industry continues to expand. Industry analysts say sales grew by 30% to $6.7 billion in 2016 and expect those totals to exceed $20 billion by 2021. But those revenues often exist outside of the regulated banking arena. Businesses are forced to operate cash only because the gray market makes it more difficult to track revenues for taxation purposes. Operating in cash only contributes to a public safety threat, as cash-intensive businesses are often targets for criminals and prevents proper tracking of large amounts of money across the nation. However, because the federal government considers marijuana as an illegal substance, banks providing services to state-licensed cannabis businesses could find themselves subject to criminal and civil liability under the Controlled Substances Act. As it stands, legalizing marijuana appears to be the right thing to do for the state of Hawaii. There has not been any compelling evidence to show that in other states like Colorado and Washington, that legalizing marijuana had an adverse effect on the citizens of those two states. There has been no empirical evidence to show that drug use has gone up at a high rate, that crime is up, are that the use of marijuana has been blamed on a high number of fatalities from car accidents. As governor, information like this would be needed in order to change the policy of legalizing marijuana in Hawaii. Legalization continues. Colorado was the first state to legalize marijuana. And as you look at the different states across the U.S., the enthusiasm for legalizing marijuana is growing.